Suffering with really bad anxiety, just was really frightened. I became very frustrated with situations. I was probably just not being particularly very kind to myself. My name is Sarah. I am a senior operations manager for a nutrition company called Nutrition X. And my journey with Emily started just under a year ago. Before my sessions with Emily, I was suffering with really bad anxiety. I had worked quite closely with my director Naomi for probably about a year before that, and she suggested that Emily would be a really good fit for some of the things that I was experiencing. But I mean, ultimately, I probably just was really frightened. I was in a position where I knew that I could progress within my career, but some of the loops just didn't quite marry up in terms of I became very frustrated with situations. I wasn't able to connect sincerely with my team members, and so it made work quite difficult. And it wasn't because I was being unkind. I was probably just not being particularly very kind to myself. I wasn't able to show myself compassion, and I would really beat myself up about different situations that happened at work or interactions. I could relive those moments over and over again. And the impact it had on me was ultimately, I think, really holding me back from career development. So I was really fortunate that I had somebody that saw a potential in me that connected me with Emily, and I was able to really start a journey of self-awareness and development that would not just only impact my working relationships and my career progression, but also help me navigate healthier relationships outside of work as well, so with my children and my family. So I started my journey with Emily, and the first couple of sessions were difficult. Actually, all of the sessions for probably half of it were really difficult, very emotional. I would leave them feeling quite drained, but what I was able to do was really start to understand me and my makeup. Some of the hardest parts about it, and some of the parts that probably you wouldn't necessarily want to explore, were about how you hold on to specific trauma and emotions and those things that have impacted you through your life that then ultimately make you as a person. They were really challenging to be able to kind of confront and try to also understand. But what it did allow me to do was start to really show up for myself in such a compassionate way, where you can understand that you're not human. You are human, but you're not this kind of robot where you have to think and feel and be a specific way. And that's from my personal life, but also before experiencing my current director's management styles, the ones that I'd experienced before were very hard and traditional, and the way that we have this perception that to be a manager or to be a leader, you have to ooze perfection, you have to have the right answer to everything that you do. And so I think that brings such a pressure that you feel like you have to show up for that way as well. So what Emily enabled me to do was to really show up for myself with a level of kindness that I'm not always going to get things right, but I can also reflect on those and then take a step forward in terms of my development. And that was really hard. The hardest bit, and probably the bit that I took a lot away from, was we did a lot of revisiting a younger Sarah and what she looked like and what I would do if I was able to walk alongside her and how I could show up for her. And I found that quite powerful, especially when I felt about how I show up for my children and how I probably was showing up for my children before this journey, in terms of if I had a really, really tough day at work, or I had perceived it as a tough day at work, I could be at home physically, but completely emotionally, I tapped out. And so the work with that piece with Emily was really beneficial. Like and I really didn't think it would have this much of an impact. And I think through those first couple of sessions, I was a bit like, what am I getting out of this? Like, how does this work? It wasn't until after the Christmas break that we probably really clicked into the bits that were so deep and so traumatizing and I would leave those sessions absolutely exhausted. It was like 9:30 at night or 9 o'clock, whenever it was, and I'd be like my little head can't even take this. But I feel such a massive responsibility of, yes, selfishly, I want to progress in my career. I feel huge responsibility that people have put some trust in me and also believe in me, and that's really strong in terms of, like, I've got these people that are like, right, we're in your corner here and we really want you to succeed in my working environment. But like at home, like I have 3 children that look at me. So for me to be able to show up and level up for them is absolutely huge. And it's breaking that cycle of trauma, of like, I've been exposed to conversations that, or like the way that people speak to each other, which I just couldn't bear to do. And I feel like if I wasn't aware of it, you can see how easily you get sucked back into that. It's just that cycle of repeated negative habits. So yeah, it definitely was really hard. But like what I was going to go back to say is that we spoke about my garden and how like I just feel this peace. Like we've done loads of work in it and planting flowers and stuff. And I sat out there last night, and the difference I think I feel sometimes is, if I had sat out in that garden this time last year, I would have felt like myself, and I would have probably, there wouldn't have been necessarily a massive change, but I would have sat in that chair and I would have been thinking about the next thing that I need to do, or I would have been listening to the hum of the busy road that's quite nearby, where like yesterday, and I just see it in small snippets, is I'm just completely present in the moment. I was watching a bee like buzz about, and there was a caterpillar, butterfly and things like that, and we were having a conversation. And it's those moments and that value there that means the most, that I walk through the door now and I don't suddenly divert into the kitchen to be on my own because I'm just so overwhelmed. I want to go straight in and find the 3 of them and understand what their day's been like. So I feel like I can be present in multiple different places now, opposed to I suck all my life, all my energy into work where I probably wasn't even doing the best job, but I was working so hard but with very little output. Does that make sense? So I think now I can be, I can be focused on work. I can have some really meaningful conversations with some of the team members. We're talking about leadership styles with some people. We can have conflict, but it can be in such a healthy way, challenging conversations, positive ones. And I'm there with them. Like they're telling me things about their day and things that they've overcome. And instead of just ticking a box and going, oh, well done, that's great, and moving on, I feel so invested in them now because I'm so much more present, and I'm not just kind of churning out the right language because it feels right to do. Like it's authentic, and then I can drive home. I get an hour just to have my own thoughts about the day, and then I can go home and I can be equally as present at home, and I don't sit down and have to rethink a conversation or double guess what someone's thought. And if I did, and those moments still do catch me, I'm not hanging on that one moment. I think, yeah, okay, that has bothered me, but I'm going to just have to deal with it tomorrow. Or I could message Naomi if I needed to, or, you know, I've got enough in my toolkit now to be able to overcome those, opposed to waking up at 2 o'clock in the morning and feeling physically sick. So, yeah. I think my main piece of advice is just to give yourself a bit of a break. And that's really easy to say when you feel quite content in the moment that you're living. And I had somebody at work that said to me a lot about being kind to myself and showing up for myself before you could show up for others. But I really do think that's probably the best piece of advice that I've ever been given, because you have to be kind to yourself before you can be present with somebody else. So yeah, I think just cut yourself a break, realise that we are all human, we do make mistakes. If you can show back up in that moment, if you can lead with compassion and empathy, and you can have those conversations where you say, hey, you know, listen, I didn't quite get that right, let's revisit this. That, I think, is all you can ask of yourself, opposed to this very traditional old school where you've got all the answers and you're pure perfection, because that is just such an unhealthy idealization of where you need to be. Yeah, I would 100% recommend working with Emily, but I do think you have to be fully committed. And I think you have to really be ready to holding a mirror up to yourself and exploring the parts of you that need that attention. I think that's really important, because the reason it took me quite so long was I felt like I couldn't share those pieces of trauma with Emily because I was so deeply ashamed of those parts of me, and they were things that I probably sometimes weren't even aware of, and I wouldn't have shared them even with the closest people. And it wasn't until I think we kind of like stumbled across that conversation that it suddenly just like came out of me like a wave, and I was really emotional, and it was really painful to talk to somebody. So I suppose, yes, 100% go and work with Emily, but I also believe you have to be 100% invested in the process and trust that.